So what else we can add, like the validation pipes and all the other nextjs concepts. So we can add like API tags for each and every route, and we can also add these API operation which are coming from nextjs swagger, which will put some details in your nextjs documentation. And the validation pipe, use pipe, so we have to import all those things. So validation pipe is to validate your payload, and the API tags in the swagger documentation, it will create a individual tag for your application. Let's say this is for notes, right? So same thing we can add everywhere. So this is API description, operation, API tag. We can remove this route. This is for patch. Here also we can add status code. You can decide, like for these you want to send 200, for create you might want to send 201. Get all nodes, HTTP code 201, that is already there. Okay, so same thing you can add to all the routes. That will add some description to your APIs, and you can put the description here. Okay, this is for delete nodes. Put some description so that same thing can appear on your swagger documentation. Okay, now what other things we can do is we can add a few more validations. So this is the node ID of type ID. We can just keep it as an ID instead of node ID, and we are sending this ID here. Okay, now the DTO validations, like you have a request body, response and all, right? You are even passing these query parameter. So how do we validate them? Because this is going to be a UUID, right? Currently this can be written like this, or you can also have a DTO for get by ID. So params, so what we can do is here we can say is get node by ID. Okay, so this is get node by ID can be your DTO. So let's create one DTO here, export class, and here we can say, okay, I'm talking about ID which should be of type UUID. So how do we specify that? ID is of type string. Here we will do all the descriptions, API property. This is the tag which we can add. Okay, API property is there. This talks about, okay, what is the description and all, what is this particular attribute is for, if it is required, true or false. So it will add only all those things into Swagger. And here we will use class validation, saying that this is should be of type UUID. Is UUID we will get from class validator. It should be, let's see where we can get, or we need to add the class validator is already there, I think, or we can add npm install -- save class validator and class former. With the help of that, we can add the validations in our DTOs. Okay, this should be of type UUID, this should be of type string, this should be of type numeric, this should be of type. So all these kind of validations are available in the class validator. So this should be simply like, so we can use the API property and UUID. Is UUID we are getting from class validator. This is good. Okay, and this is required, right? So get node by ID, that means you should have to pass the query parameter ID of type UUID. Otherwise it will break. I mean, it will give you the 400 bad request. We will import this, and everywhere we can just pass this. ID is DTO dot ID. Okay, same thing, you have to do the changes. So in query parameter we are passing update node, query parameter ID, and inside the body also we have the ID. So DTO, so this is, let's rename it to the param. So it will become param.id. Okay, similarly in the delete, when you are sending anything for the delete, first we have to validate that ID of type UUID or not. Okay, these kind of validations, and in this things you have to add this API property and required flag, like in the create text is required. Okay, and another thing is completed, which is of type boolean. Is boolean, is there anything like that? Yes, there is something like that. And is complete by default we can also set as a false. This is coming inside a payload, right? So we are setting all these both required true. Similarly, we can just put, this is a text, right? So it should be age string. And age string we can import from the class validator. Now update, in the update what you need is completed boolean and all. So we can add the validation. What is required, what is not required, we can decide. Okay, is completed is not required, so we can mark it as required false. Is boolean, so we can just we don't need to add a validations here, but here is, this is a string, this is required, and we can import the same stuff from the class validator inside update also. So it's like a basic things which you can write. We have already written very complex applications and DTOs and all, and we already know how to do all these things. Now what is the next thing we are targeting is, first of all, getting these APIs running and then writing the test cases.